So at Micro Focus, in our view, identity powers everything. The identity is the center of the security universe, whether it's in the early days of provisioning in SSO, risk and compliance, or identity-centric security. We feel like that identity is the center of all this, and Privileged Account Manager is in the center of it as well. But what is Privileged Account Management? Privileged Account Management is a way of controlling the privileged access that certain people have, whether they are real people or even non-human accounts like service accounts or other automation type scripts that may be taking place. And so these are people that have been given higher than normal capabilities, normally to control things such as databases, networks, operating systems, applications. In a typical enterprise, you have thousands, maybe tens of thousands of users and employees and contractors, whereas the privileged users, those that have privileged access to certain areas, it's just a handful. But as with many things, it's the small amount that has the greatest risk. We know from the past few years that there's been significant breaches that have caught our eye, such as the TJX breach, where different credit cards were divulged. Recently, Marriott was fined by the GDPR. Then we saw a ransomware attack for Cognizant. And those are things that we see in the headlines pretty much every day. In the past, we've seen Home Depot, Target, Equifax, the NSA with the Snowden incident, and very recently SolarWinds with the supply chain attack that we saw. And all of these result in different types of impacts to an enterprise, such as loss of reputation, loss of actual business when ransomware hits and you can't do your business, or compliance fines, which people used to not really pay much attention to, but now they're really being enforced, as we see with Marriott, and there's been other ones. So HIPAA and PCI, all of these compliance and regulatory standards are now being heavily enforced. The one thing that all these attacks had in common was the hackers used privileged credentials to perform the attack. That may not be what you hear. You may hear things like ransomware or stolen credit cards or whatever, but it usually and many times starts with privileged credentials being stolen. And that's where they get the access to do the rest of the work. James Scott came out with a quote that says, "There's no silver bullet solution with cybersecurity. The layered defense is the only viable defense." A recent report from Gartner revealed that privileged access was a top priority among practitioners, security practitioners, and Forrester has estimated that 80% of security breaches involve privileged accounts, yet nearly every breach involves some sort of privileged access abuse. So many of you have heard of the cyberkill chain, and so it begins with reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions. So the question is, where does PAM fit into this? So PAM fits in the early stages primarily, maybe even in reconnaissance, although I didn't mark that. But weaponization is one of the keys. It's where it's the entry point so that other things can be done. Either other credentials are created to allow people to get in, or restrictions are lifted temporarily, or something of that nature. But the privileged access allows the hacker to do other things to complete the hack. In a typical timeline of a security breach, you have the point where the breach occurs, then you have detection, acknowledgement, containing, and resolving and recovering. You have the different mean times, mean time to detect, mean time to acknowledge, etc. And the average time is at least 30 days. I've heard even estimates of 180 days for a typical breach to be found and contained. And PAM actually fits way up here. Whereas we do have other products that are in the other part of the incident management chain, PAM is there to prevent, much as we were talking about just in previous slides, preventing the incident from happening at all. So what are the essentials for a PAM system, for a privilege management system? First, you need to have a strong place to store their privileged credentials. It needs to be very secure. These are your privileged credentials. You can't let anyone just wander in and ask for them. You need to have policies that restrict the usage of who gets them, who has access, how do they get it, what systems, and for how long. You may have contractors coming in to do temporary work. You need to be able to allow for that for a certain time, but then stop it from happening after when they're supposed to be done. You need a strict auditing system, which would monitor and audit all activities the user performed while in the privileged state. You need to have reports and information that support your compliance standards regarding privilege management. With the Micro Focus NetIQ PAM solution, we have a policy-based access control with granularity into things like time frames, how long someone could be in a privileged state, which systems and commands can they execute, and can they target. We have processes for on-demand access requests, including time limitations and a full approval process. Real-time privilege session monitoring, the ability to terminate sessions if misused. Recordings for audit and forensics if needed. Keystroke, snapshot, full video. And there's a whole slew of features that comes with the PAM product, including the ability to discover privileged accounts. The load balancing and failover are key. A recent addition was integration with our user behavior analytics solutions. And so there are many other features. I'm not going to go through them all for the sake of time. So integrations that PAM has with other systems. So in the area of systems, operating system, Windows, Linux, Unix, databases over here, Oracle, SQL Server, etc., web apps, SaaS, or any kind of web apps, app-to-app, backend. Then you have cloud, like Azure and AWS and OpenStack. Just because a system is not listed here doesn't mean you cannot use PAM to manage the credentials, the privileged credentials. Pretty much any system PAM could work with. These are the ones that we make it just drop dead easy, just so easy because it's just out of the box. But there are many other systems that aren't listed here. The IBM I series, for example, and there's several other systems. Integrations with other cyber-res solutions. So when we talk about cyber-res, we're talking about the security area for Micro Focus. So you have the different products. The advanced authentication part of them delivers the multi-factor, secure login, single sign-on. Sentinel and ArcSight are in the SIEM area. Identity Manager, IGA, and Interset is the UEBA solution that we spoke of. So there are many ways that you can use PAM in your day-to-day work. Some people continue to use things like SSH, RDP, and PAM will work with those. Or you can log in, the user can log into the PAM console and access systems from there. And there's advantages and disadvantages to doing that, mainly advantages. That's the way I like to work, and many people that I work with, that's the way they work. And so in this case, you would be accessing these systems either by an agent, a proxy-based agent, or an agent on the system. And then there's the real-time monitoring and then the audit information being tracked while the session is going on. If you have a multi-factor product, then that's going to be also part of the workflow. If you have our user analytics or user behavior analysis, looking for anomalies, that's part of this too. You can use the risk scores from the anomaly engine to determine, should I allow this session to begin? It's not like it's going to stop it. It's actually automatic. You set the thresholds and PAM takes care of the rest. And so if you have both the multi-factor and the UEBA, they're all part of this. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.